Well, hello again. I was looking at Miles Johnston's channel the other day, and he had a video up there. Actually, I might leave a link to it below. There again, I might not, because it becomes absolutely preposterous very quickly. But anyway, it was called something like DUMS, which apparently stands for Deep Underground Military Bases. As opposed to the people that you might think would participate in the bases project. But DUMS and scalar energy, that was it. Yeah, DUMS and scalar energy. And there's a chap there that sounds a lot like Yogi Bear, talking about these deep underground military bases. And it doesn't take very long for him to get around to telling us that aliens actually told us how to make these. And these deep underground military bases, of course, we're interacting with aliens, and all these deep underground military bases are connected together with maglev trains, you know, and these railway lines run underground for thousands of miles. They connect all these bases together, and I think another base's favourite, James Casbolt, said that there was one between, there's an underground an underground railway, and I can't remember if he said it was a maglev railway or whatever, but between Peasmore in Oxfordshire and the Dulcie base in somewhere in the States, which is nothing more than a MESA, of course. There's no base under there. There's no base under Peasmore. This is all science fiction hogwash, as you might expect. Can you imagine the amount of people that will be required to look after that kind of infrastructure? Can you imagine, you know, how many people will be involved in building that kind of infrastructure? How much money it would cost? Where does all the spoil go? Oh, actually, now that's an interesting one, because the Yogi Bear sounding chap said that actually the rock is vaporised. It's vaporised by these laser cannons, this laser drill. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen the movie The Core, but very close to the beginning of The Core, this chap demonstrates. He's an eccentric scientist living out in the Nevada desert or something, and he's come up with this machine for, you know, vaporising rock, and he demonstrates it to these military people, so they need to get to the core of the earth very quickly. Have you ever seen that film? You probably have. If you're watching this channel, you probably quite like science fiction and those sort of films. So in the core, they get this machine, he fires it up, there's lots of noise, you know, and these lasers cut this perfectly cylindrical tunnel in this cliff face into this rock. And I think that's where this guy's got this idea from. So there's no waste, and it just produces this tunnel. You turn it on, and it just burns its way through the rock. Now, Miles Johnson actually asked him a sensible question. I couldn't believe it. He said, and how would this be powered? Actually, to be fair, Miles Johnson was... now, I couldn't stomach very much of this video, to be perfectly honest, but he was actually trying to get some information out of this guy, and he actually sounded incredulous. And he said, you know, how is this thing powered? And give us the details of this and give us the details of that. Now, he may do that in other videos as well. But on this particular one, I thought, okay, yeah, he's just for the first few minutes, I thought he's done a pretty good job at interviewing this guy. And this fella said, well, they're nuclear powered. It's a nuclear powered laser drill that they use for cutting these tunnels, for putting these maglev trains in. Now, so Miles says, how is this laser powered drill? Where does it get its power from? And he said it's nuclear. It's a sort of reactor they put on, small nuclear reactor they put on submarines and naval vessels. And I thought, now ask him where the cooling comes from, Miles. But he didn't ask him. If you get to see this, Miles, next time you talk to him, ask him. Because obviously submarine reactors and naval vessel reactors draw seawater through heat exchangers to run through condensers for condensing steam back to water to go back into the closed loop water system for the reactor, for the pressurised water reactors. So anyway, so gaping hole there. Where's the cooling for the reactor coming from? Now, as I say, I didn't watch a huge amount of this because it was pretty excruciating, but where is all the material coming from to actually build the maglev railway? You don't just dig a tunnel and magically a magnetic field appears in the tunnel when you run your trains along it. You've got to you've got to build some sort of conductive rail for the maglev train to run along. You've got to build the trains. You've got to get them in the tunnels. You're talking about a huge project. To make tunnels going under the Atlantic Ocean, of course, with maglev trains and it going between these military bases is preposterous science fiction nonsense. It's twaddle. So deep underground military bases, whilst there may be one or two underground military facilities around, aren't going to be interacting with aliens. They're not going to be interconnected with maglev trains. And they're not going to be built using the designs and the advice of aliens, the Nephilim and the Anakai and all this. Just put a line through all that rubbish. There's no such thing as a Nephilim or the Anakai or any of this absolute twaddle. Now, I thought it would be interesting to just point out that the Americans did actually have a go at building a secret underground base. I don't know whether any of the conspiracy theorists have stumbled across this particular thing, but back in 1959, when the Cold War was on, the Americans thought they'd make an underground missile base under the ice in Greenland, because they thought they might have to fight a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And that particular project was quite ambitious. It was extremely ambitious, in fact, and they did actually get some of it built, and they installed they had a nuclear reactor built by some outfit in the States, and they took that out there and fired it up and powered the base with nuclear power, and they dug lots of tunnels. They actually told the Denmark, because Greenland was under the administration of the administrative control of Denmark at the time. They told them it was a scientific research base, but of course the idea was that once all these tunnels were dug, all the power plant was in and the electrical infrastructure was in, that it was actually going to be a network of tunnels that they could move nuclear missiles around, and they could launch the nuclear missiles from different spots along these tunnels in the ice. So anyway, the project was called Project Iceworm, and it was called Camp Century, and I'll leave a link to it below. So if you're interested, you can have a look at that, and you can see some of the things that the Americans got up to in 1959. There's no maglev trains. I think it might have had a railway down there, actually. There might have been a railway, because I think the tunnel system was quite extensive. But it certainly wasn't done with the aid of any kind of aliens, and there's no sort of alien interaction. This is purely a Cold War project. But anyway, I'll leave a link below, and you can have a look at that, and you can watch the YouTube documentary. It's really quite interesting. I think it's about half an hour long, and you might, if you've never seen or heard of this thing, you might find it interesting. But when it comes to deep underground military bases today, interconnected with maglev trains, interacting with aliens, rubbish. Science fiction, rubbish. Put a line through it. Okay, well, as always, if you've made it this far through the video, congratulations. I'll have to start thinking of some prizes I can give out for people that actually do make it all the way to the end of these videos. Perhaps I'll catch you again.